What is up, everybody? Wolf 420, about to bring you another Wolf 420 Supernatural review. Yeah.
Let's go.
Why don't we just roll the credits and get this thing? Why don't we just roll the credits? Get this thing started.
I'll be kicking your scrawny arse, I will. Yar.
Excuse me for a second.
Yar.
I have to go hammer out a few details.
Shinobi. Oh, pirate. Yar, I say no, that I do. Okay.
Welcome back, SPN family. How are y'all? Okay, so, gotta love that beautiful moment of peace after you hammer out a couple details. Glorious. Things feel so much better afterward. Like even taking a drink of this Pellegrino water. Mark Pellegrino is a really awesome actor. So let's get on with this recap review of Supernatural Season 14, Episode number 2. I know, I'm late as all hell, but whatever. I'll try to get caught up, hopefully. Sooner or later. Anyways. Yes, Supernatural Season 14, Episode 2, entitled Gods and Monsters. So, we open on a scene of a dark, dank, decrepit building. And we're panning over this disastrous, dank hole of a building. And eventually, it's revealed to be a church. And suddenly, we pan over the scene more, and we see people tied to beams in the church. And we see #mean at an altar with a guy strapped down and his throat slit. And he has a goblet full of blood. #mean does. And #mean pulls out a little bit of a little vial and pours the white liquid from the vial into the goblet, saying a little of this, a little of that. So then he grabs the guy that he has tied to the altar, and he pours the goblet down his gullet, through his mouth hole. And suddenly, the guy's freaking eyes burn out of his skull, his insides melt, the guy explodes. And #mean says, "Oh, too much of that. Okay, who's next?" And he looks over the people tied to beams. And then we cut to the intro segment of the Season 14 logo. The epic angel wings. Like that. And then we open on a scene of the bunker, and Bobby, Mary, Sammy, and Cassie are loading up and talking. And Bobby mentions who would land in Duluth. And they said that it was Duluth. And then Sammy says, we found a bunch of I read a report of a bunch of corpses with their eyes burned out. That's Michael, they all exclaim. And they start loading up to go because it is a clue as to #mean's whereabouts. And they remind each other that it is Dean also. And Jack comes in the room and, well, actually they tell Cass that he has to stay behind because Michael would sense Cass's angelic presence and that would ruin the element of surprise attack. So Cass has to stay behind also to babysit Nick and Jack. So Jack comes into the room as they're talking about Nick and how they have a hard time looking at Nick because he's Lucifer, or was Lucifer. And oh boy, okay, some shit went down. But first off, they talk about that, and they tell Jack that he has to stay behind, and Jack proclaimed that he sucked on the last hunt, and that he would get better, and that's what he would do. And that was an interesting moment. And we cut to Sam and Mary and Bobby leaving, and we cut to Cass bringing food in to Nick, and Nick sitting on the cot, and Cass can't even look at the guy, and Nick's like, I'm not him, Castiel. And we have a nice heart-to-heart moment with Cass and Nick, and it's very interesting. And then we come to find out what Castiel tells Nick what actually happened, and then Nick remembers, and Mark Pellegrino broke down. OMG, man. It was painful to watch his breakdown. It was, wow. So, he's a great actor. He's a great actor. So, we have that scene. And then we cut to a mortuary with Sammy, Mary, Bobby, and the mortician. And they're talking about all the corpses having the same markings and whatnot. And they're investigating corpses, and they eventually find out that the corpses are actually vampires. Like, what? Wait a minute now. So go back to that church scene. Are you telling me #mean is infusing monsters with angelic grace? Whoa. So then we cut to a ball scene. And holy shit, man. Like, this is crazy. First of all, we have monsters. We have an archangel uniting monsters under his banner to go to war with the world. Like, whoa, dude. So anyways, we cut to a ball scene, and #mean cleaned up nicely in a nice suit, and he gets in the mirror and he starts struggling for a second, and Dean appears in the mirror. He's like, get out of me! And Michael's like, no, bitch, I'm inside you. And then Dean's like, I will fight you. And Michael's like, I own you. And he punches the mirror and breaks it. That's 7 years bad luck, Mike. Like, whoa, bro. #mean. It's pretty damn mean, though. I'm even closer to you than I was before. Yes. Anyways, I know you guys deserve better. I know. But I don't think I'm going to do any extra Wolf Den sketch this time. And I'm going to try to move these things along a little bit quicker. And sometimes, like I already have, I may leave out some details. So I missed a scene. You can tell I didn't watch this quarter this time before filming this bit. Yeah, because I discovered I missed something. We had a heart-to-heart moment with Jack and Cass after the morgue, before Dean, #mean, talking to himself. Yeah. We had that little heart-to-heart moment with Jack and Cass, and it was a touching little sequence. It was pretty cool. And, Cass tells Jack that Cass actually lost his powers and stuff once too. And he got to be himself. And it was pretty cool. And then, Cass tells Jack that where he comes from is not as important as where he's going. And he's got to keep fighting and moving forward. Just like paralleling the last episode where Bobby says how hard you can get hit and get back and keep moving forward. Yeah. So it's cool. And now we will cut away to the next segment after this momentary break, which is just going to be a jump cut for you. So, yeah. So we cut to a scene of Castiel we cut to the bunker, and Cass is on the phone with Sam, and they're talking about the vampires and archangels interactions, and they're just confused. And they talk about it for a second, and Nick comes back in, and Castiel and Nick have a discussion. And, well, eventually, Nick is outraged that his family was not, the person who murdered his family wasn't discovered, none of this. And as Nick was trying to storm out, Cass tried to stop him, and Nick snapped his fingers and went to try to smite Cass out of reflex. And Cass backed up, scared, well, unnerved by this. And Nick didn't even realize what he did. And Cass was like, I think Lucifer had more of an influence on you than we think. And Cass calmed him down and checked his aura. And he thinks that there's still a lot of Lucifer left in Nick. It was like, oh yeah. Influence remains. And I tell you, wow. But, spoilers, so let's continue on. So we cut to a random no-tell motel with a random girl laying in bed. And the FBI starts pounding at her door, and she attempts to escape out the window. And they bust open the door, and it turns out it's actually Sam and Mary and Bobby. And they're like, we know who you are, and then we're like, we're hunters, and she's like, you're hunters, and they're like, we just want to talk, and she tells them about Michael and how, well, she didn't know who he was, but she tells them about him, and she tells them that he actually wasn't killing vampires like they thought he was. No, they don't realize yet, but she tells them that he was actually, it was like he was experimenting. And they were like, experimenting for what? Well, then Bobby wants to cut her head off. And she begs to be let go. And they pause and they cut away. And we cut over to a scene of #mean. And earlier when I said he was at a ball, it wasn't a ball, it was just a swank hotel. So we cut to a swank hotel. And #mean leading a girl into the hotel room. And they're about to get it on, it looks like. And they're talking. And he's like, oh, I know what you are. And then she pulls out fangs. And judging by the teeth, I'm looking and I'm like, it's either a vamp, a Vitala, or a werewolf. And he's like, didn't you know that I knew what you were? And his eyes glow with that death angel blue. And he looks scary. And he says, now summon your master. And we cut away from there. So we cut back, eventually, to Cass and Nick conversating. And eventually, as they're talking, Cass tells Nick that he inhabits a body and all that. And Nick tells him, he cuts him deep with a line that he's nothing but a stone cold body snatcher like Lucifer. And that cuts Cass deep. You could see it just tear through the poor guy. And as he's walking away solemnly, he looks back to Nick and says, what happened to Jimmy Novak and his family is my greatest regret in all of my thousands of years. And we cut away from there. And we cut to... Cass walks away and says he needs to look in on Jack. And then we cut to Jack knocking on somebody's door. It turns out it's his mother Kelly's parents' house. And we have a touching and sad meeting between Jack and his grandparents. He can't even tell them who he is. He has to pretend he's a friend of their daughter. And it's a very touching moment. And Jack connects on a deeper level with who he is, where he's from, where he's going, who he is, the basic him, his mother's influence. And it was very touching, and he hugs them and leaves. And we cut to the chick vampire that Sam questioned earlier. And #mean lands in the room with her and greets her and she tries to tell him that she didn't, but he knows she did. And he was like, that's what I wanted you to do. You're bait. And you don't need the bait anymore. And without even looking at her. Oh, and mind you, awesome. Sam spared the vampire girl, we found out, because of this scene. But the nicety did not last, did it? Nope. No, it didn't. Nope. So like I said, was saying, #mean, without even looking at her, he's just staring at the wall with his back to the girl, and his eyes glow murderous death angel blue. And she explodes without even looking at her. she was smoten. And that was insane. And then we cut away from there to the next commercial break. And we are back. And so we cut back to a scene of Jack and Castiel. And Castiel's yelling at Jack, "How could you have taken such a stupid risk?" And they're talking back and forth, and it's, Jack decides, says that he had to. This is a really long episode, I swear. Like, wow. So Jack said that he had to connect with his family. It became a touching moment eventually. Castiel smiled because Jack mentioned that he looks like his mother, and he does. He also looks like Castiel. Interesting. Yeah. And we cut over to Nick meeting with his creepy old neighbor from his old neighborhood. "Won't you be my neighbor?" "No, not if it's you, dude." Anyways, Nick is meeting with his neighbor, and he's trying to figure out what happened that night and why the neighbor changed his original story. And well, you can obviously tell that this creepy old dude is just bullshitting Nick. And Nick's not going to take that. Grips him up by his throat, slams him into the wall. I guess there is a lot of Lucifer-esque influence within the vessel. And he tells him, "Oh, I think you know exactly what happened. And you're going to tell me, bitch." And they cut away from there. And they cut to #mean with a werewolf alpha talking. And, he's hyping up the fact that he's got a plan and that he's worked it out. There were some kinks at first, but he's worked them out. And he says to the werewolf alpha, gives him a vision of a world, and the alpha already knows the vision of the world, and he says it's a foolhardy dream. Let's not do it. But #mean has a different plan, he says. "Of course we can do this shit, man. I have a plan for that. Why be the hunted when you can be the hunter?" And they cut away from there. And we cut to the old decrepit church where the episode initially began. It's always kind of neat when they wrap things up where it begins, And it's Sam and Bobby and Mary investigating the old decrepit church. And apparently #mean is not there like they were told he was. And they investigate for a little bit, and then when they figure out that Michael is definitely not there, all of a sudden, a bunch of things bust in the windows and start coming at them. And they figure out that they're werewolves, and they're fighting them, and they're shooting them with silver bullets, and it's not working. And they're like, "Our silver bullets aren't working," and they're fighting these werewolves. And it's like, really? Why hast thou forsaken me, bullet? Son of a bitch! Anyways, guess it's back to this then. Oh well, that'll work. Nice and hearty it will, yahar. Anyways, so eventually they overcome these werewolves by chopping their bloody heads off, as if I would do with my cutlass there. Yeah. So they chop their bloody heads off, and then they're like, "What kind of werewolves were these? Silver didn't even touch them." And they're standing around confused. And they're like, "What the hell, man?" And then suddenly, Suddenly, #mean busts in the door and begins walking toward them and raising a hand. But then he falls into the wall and he puts his hand on it and he says, "Sam, it's me, and it's Dean." Like, I don't trust this, yo. This is a sleeper cell. I do not trust this. What is going on here, Dean? What is up? So they cut away and they cut back to them sitting around with Dean, and Dean's like, "It really is me." And they're like, "How did you eject Michael?" And he's like, "I didn't. He just left." And they're all confused as to why Michael would leave and what the hell exactly is Michael doing? Like, whoa. Now we know right now what he's doing. And it is not boding well for the future of this series. I can tell you that right now. Okay. So we cut over to Nick. And he's slowly walking. And he's covered in blood. And he looks at himself in the mirror. And he raises his hand. And in it is a blood-covered hammer. I guess he hammered out the details of what happened that night. And then my suspicion was confirmed when they cut over and show the hammer-beaten face of the creepy old neighbor dude. And yeah, Nick hammered out the details. And that's where we started this review. Always nice when things wrap up in the end to where they began. So yeah, all in all, good episode. We're learning now that they're monsters. He's perfected it. And and we met Jack's grandparents, and we met and Nick, #Nickifer, something like that. Turns out Nick, and I've really just completely missed this point earlier, that Nick was having flashbacks of shit he was doing as Lucifer. So we knew that Lucifer's influence was still in Nick the entire time. And Cass figured it out, and then Nick went off on his own to track down what happened to his family, and he hammered out the details. Yep. Yeah, and that was the end of the episode. They cut away to the credits from there. And yeah, we learned a lot of interesting stuff, and it was a good episode. And there was like something else I wanted to say about it. But I completely forgot. But it looks like Dean's back, but I'm thinking he's a sleeper cell. Like for real. Like, why would Michael just leave the vessel? What? But alright then. I don't know, there was a bunch of stuff I wanted to say, but I completely forgot it all. And this has been going on for long enough anyways. I'm guessing another half-hour review. This episode went a lot longer, though. Like, both of these did, actually. They went, quite a bit longer than normal. It's interesting. But yeah, that'll be it. That'll be Wolf 420. This will be Wolf 420 Supernatural Review. This time, Season 14, Episode number 2. Yes, I know we're up to like Episode 6 or some crap right now. I don't care. We'll get to them. Maybe we'll do it like daily. I don't know. Probably not. I doubt it. Like, this was a lot of work to do today. But I did it. And anyways, yeah, that'll be Wolf 420. Supernatural Season 14, Episode 2. Entitled Gods and Monsters. And, yeah. Always keep fighting. Be excellent to each other. Have an awesome day. And as always, people, peace out.